everyone, welcome back. This is another episode of Spectator Sports. This is episode number 92, and we're going to dissect a lot of news out of the NFL and the NBA. Before we get into it, you guys know what to do. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Take a look at our Instagram and TikTok pages, and you can get the audio from this podcast on Spotify. All links are in the description. Jason Kelce has officially announced his retirement from the NFL, and this is historic 13-year career, 7 Pro Bowl appearances, 6 first-team All-Pros, and what he's been able to do on and off the field for the Philadelphia Eagles is something to be remembered, not just for Philly fans, but for football fans in general. His ability to be doubted early on in his career, from being a 6th-round draft pick, also a walk-on at Cincinnati, to be going on this Hall of Fame arc, to now being a first ballot Hall of Famer in Canton when his time will come in 2029, I think is something to be definitely celebrated for, because what he's done for Philly, underdog mentality with that amazing speech in their Super Bowl campaign after winning it all in 2018, was something to be remembered for. He is a great guy on and off the field, and his arc has been amazing under the tutelage of Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach for the Philadelphia Eagles. He is someone that is never going to be flashy at all. He is comedic. He is firstly amazing dad, but amazing teammate as well. You'll see so many of his teammates, Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts, anybody who has played with him will say great things about him. He's going to be an amazing media personality, which I think will be his next step in his career. Already have the New Heights podcast and probably have something in a booth sometime pretty soon. Wouldn't be surprised about that. But the fact that growing up, seeing him from 2011 to what he is now has been obviously bittersweet. You wish that there was more, but it comes down to being a family guy first and spending time with his amazing wife and 3 beautiful daughters. And I mean, happy retirement, Jason. You've meant a lot to me personally as a football fan and an Eagles fan, and looking forward to the next endeavor. LeBron James is the first person to go over the 40K mark, and I mean, this is just another accolade to his historic career. Already being the league's all-time leading scorer, he eclipsed the 40K mark against the Denver Nuggets last Saturday. Again, this is a testament to his longevity. He invests $1 million into his body, whether it's through diet, exercise, rehab, whatever it is. He invests all this money into his body a year, and it proves a difference. It's gonna take a player to average 24.4 points a game over 20 seasons to match LeBron's mark at 40K points. Something that's probably not going to be done just because there's just so many times that you could see injuries, and this longevity is truly something that we haven't seen in the NBA. And he's definitely a physical player. He's gone down. He plays in the paint quite a bit, so there's definitely times where he can take hits and fouls and just take some time to get back up. But certainly something where LeBron is something where, and this is certainly something where LeBron's career should be celebrated as. Now, the Lakers still have some work to do to get back into the playoff mix. They're in the play-in tournament as of now. I'm sure that to make some noise in the playoffs, they have to continue to improve. I think they can beat any team on a given night, but can they beat one of these upper tier teams 4 times? That'll be tough. I don't think they can beat Denver, for example, but the Clippers or the unproven Thunder and Timberwolves would be teams that I think they would want to avoid the LA Lakers and LeBron James. When Doc Rivers joined the Milwaukee Bucks, it was a grimacing sight. I mean, we cringed and we saw the bad defense going into the All-Star break, but since then they seem to have turned it around. They've won 6 in a row and they've improved the defensive side. They used to be bottom 3rd when Doc Rivers took over from Adrian Griffin, and now they've ascended in this small sample size to top 10 defense. The fact that Patrick Beverley is joining the lineup isn't a great difference, but his presence certainly is noted and certainly making a difference on the defensive side. You still have Giannis one of the best players in basketball right now. You still have Damian Lillard and a pretty good all-round team with more time just to install Doc Rivers' system, because remember, he joined in the middle of the year and that's not an easy thing to do. I know that he had this little beef with JJ Redick earlier with the accountability thing, which I think it were a list of excuses that Doc was trying to describe to the media, but some of them may have been valid depending on it. But it takes some time to integrate your system into a team, especially in the middle of the year. But now it seems to be taking shape, and they still have some time before the playoffs come around. If they're able to get into the 2 seed, what that means is they avoid the Boston Celtics, at least into the conference finals. Now, they do have to put in the work to get there, maintain that seed. But if they're able to do so, I think they can give the Boston Celtics some trouble. But let's face it, Boston is a whole different animal. And speaking of Boston, Boston has been one of the best teams in the NBA and in recent NBA history, because they're 48-12. They've won 11 straight, and en route, they have just beaten the Golden State Warriors on Sunday by 50 plus points. And this is now extending an NBA record of a team to beat 3 different teams by 50 plus points. Something that has been done ever. The fact that they have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, that's one thing. But the acquisition of Kristaps Porzingis, him able to do things on both sides of the court, has been a monumental difference. And they did beat this Golden State Warriors team without Kristaps Porzingis. Now, I think with Golden State missing a couple key pieces in their lineup is something to keep of note. But the fact that they've been mowing down opponents, I mean, recently, the 5-6 game stretch that they've had on this winning streak, they've beaten teams by an average of 30 plus points. This is just true dominance throughout the year. Joe Mazzulla, who took a lot of criticism in his first year as head coach under unforeseen circumstances with the whole Ime Udoka controversy, he took on and looked reflected in this offseason and came back a pretty good head coach. He's learned from the whole timeout thing, and I think they've been able to focus more inside the paint compared to just living and dying by the 3. Now, I think some of their losses had attributed to poor shooting nights from the outside, but you're not going to get that on a consistent basis. And remember, in the postseason, you have to beat the Celtics team 4 times to get past them and go to the next round. For now, I don't see anybody in the Eastern Conference beating them. There is a 6-7 game gap between them and the 2-seeded Milwaukee Bucks. It's going to take some time, and unless there's some catastrophic injury, they should be favorites to get out of the East and also get to the NBA Finals. And I think if Denver were to meet them, that's going to be a tricky matchup, because Denver did go into Boston and beat them. But if it's anyone else, I think Boston would be absolutely favorites to win this NBA title. 2 years ago, Russell Wilson was traded from the Seattle Seahawks to the Denver Broncos, and we thought, well, Denver finally got their guy. They have this defense, and they just needed a quarterback to pilot this offense. But 2 years later, 2 different head coaches, Denver has become the laughingstock of the NFL. They have had issues with keeping Russ on the field. He got benched both seasons, and they fired Nathaniel Hackett. You thought it was maybe more to do with Nathaniel Hackett, so you brought in Sean Payton. That hasn't turned into much, because in both years, no postseason appearances, and neither year was a winning season. Russ definitely improved from his 2022 campaign, that's for sure. But it still wasn't enough to move the needle, and when the league starts next week, they will release Russell Wilson from the Denver Broncos. It's going to be a huge dead cap hit. It's actually an NFL record, $85 billion. And that's eclipsing the last 2 records combined. So that's going to limit what Sean Payton can do the next couple of years. This means that you have to hit on some draft picks in this upcoming draft, and maybe even next year as well, to get up from underneath this whole cap situation. It's limited assets. You can't really extend your good players, and you can't sign good players. You have to make do with what you have and hit on some cheaper players with the draft. Now, in their draft range right now, unless they were to move up, I think they could take a guy like Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy. Those would be pretty good guys in Sean Payton's system. But absolutely, it will be some growing pains, because you have Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not going anywhere. And then the LA Chargers just signed Jim Harbaugh as head coach. They still have Justin Herbert. I think they're going to have a revamp of that squad out there in LA. So Denver is going to have to go through a couple years of growing pains to get up from underneath this contract issue with Russell Wilson. And it will take some time before they become a true contender, is what they envisioned when they brought in Sean Payton. Justin Fields is the Chicago Bears quarterback for now, but it's definitely clear that there's some momentum trending in the direction that they will take Caleb Williams top overall in next month's draft. I'm not a big fan of this because I would be loving the move if they were to trade down, get some more picks, build around Justin Fields, and probably even get another first-round pick for next year to build around that. But they want to make the flashy move. That's fine. Go ahead. You live and you die by your decisions, Chicago. They are going with the same head coach, keeping it the same, but they're going to change the quarterback. Yes, they have some pieces around him, but they're going to need to draft other pieces around Caleb Williams. They need to beef up the O-line, shore up the defense, and get him another back. I think the best thing for quarterbacks these days is a solid running game, take some pressure off of them. And with that, the offensive line needs to open up lanes for the running back. So that's some moves that Chicago needs to do. For Justin Fields, I think it has to be a fit mostly, because it comes down to the pieces around him. Atlanta would be really good with these skills players, but offensive line wise, they need to work on that. I think recently they've been pretty solid, that they could use another body or two, another well-known name on that offensive line to beef that up and help Justin Fields out if he were to land there, and maybe even Pittsburgh as well. Now Pittsburgh has a pretty bad O-line and their running game has been suspect, but they have very good wide receivers and I think a good defense. It's just a matter of getting that offensive production to help out Mike Tomlin's crew, because with Mitchell Trubisky, they had Mason Rudolph and then Kenny Pickett. None of those have worked, and that's why they're kind of going back to the drawing board with the quarterback situation there. For Justin, it's going to be coming down to a system that maximizes his dual threat capabilities, been able to run and pass, but continue to develop as a passer is a big thing for Justin Fields to remain in this league. He definitely has the skills and the tools to do so. It's just a matter of the surrounding cast. So I would love to see him maybe in Atlanta and then getting developed there, because it seems that Raheem Morris is building some good culture out there in Atlanta. And that's it for this episode of Spectator Sports. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys know what to do though. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, helps us grow here on YouTube. If you'd like to take a look from clips from this podcast, you can get that here also on YouTube in our playlist, but also on TikTok and Instagram. And the whole audio from this podcast, you can find that on Spotify. All links are in the description. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.